The information contained in this video is intended for educational purposes. We are not responsible for any damage to your device resulting from improper disassembly or installation. Proceed at your own risk.
This project is more difficult than the iPhone 6 glowing logo mod because of the adhesives inside of the display and under the battery. I planned on replacing both of them initially, but you might want to pass on the idea of getting the screen off without damaging the seal and or trying to replace it. These are not easy things to do. You'll probably want to remove the display for this mod. I started out thinking that it would be best to leave it attached, but changed my mind during the process. It's a good idea to watch the entire tutorial before you attempt this modification. Back in November of last year, I did a video showing how you can modify your iPhone 6 so that the apple on the back glows whenever the LCD lights up. And a lot of people asked me if it was possible to do the same thing with the iPhone 6s. And the good news is, yes, it is. Not only that, but you don't have to make a white glowing logo. There are some different colors you can use. So I picked up a few of these iPhone 6s glowing logos, and for today's project, we're going to use this iPhone 6s and modify it so that the logo glows on the back. If you're interested in these kind of mods, you want to get more information about repair tutorials and accessory reviews, be sure to hit the subscribe button so whenever a new video comes out, you'll be the first to know. And if you're looking for the parts, tools, and more information about these modifications and repair tutorials, be sure to check the links in the video description. I always include links that shows you where you can get everything that's used in the video. Otherwise, I'll put a link in the video so you can click on here directly and go to the site that is selling these parts and tools. So we have our iPhone 6s right here. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we power this off before we get started. And then of course we have our glowing logo. Also we have the replacement adhesive for the display assembly. Replacing the inner adhesive is difficult, but it does help to seal out moisture. When we remove this screen, more than likely we're going to break the seal and damage the waterproofing, which will definitely affect your phone's ability to resist water. Now keep in mind, once we change the logo out, there's also going to be an entry portal here, so it's not going to be as water resistant as it was previously. You don't want to set this down in a puddle. So I'm going to take the, let's move this stuff aside here for a moment. And we got the phone turned off. We'll go ahead and start by removing the screws from the bottom. What I'm going to do is attempt to open this up without damaging the seal on the outside, so that's probably not going to work out. But we're going to give it a shot anyways. And the way that I would recommend doing that is by using a heat gun. We will warm up the surface and then carefully pry starting from the bottom. And again, just in case it doesn't work, we do have our backup here to replace it. So I will apply some heat. And we want to get the surface temperature warm to the touch, but not hot enough to burn your finger. If you don't have a heat gun, you can use a blow dryer, but it does take a lot longer. So let's see what happens when we start prying. I'm going to very carefully go underneath the bottom. And the tricky part is usually getting this started. Now you can use a dulled razor blade to go in here at the bottom. You can also use a suction cup, or even better is this double suction cup tool. And of course this, along with the rest of the items that are used in this modification, can be found down in the video description. If you don't want to go there, just type in gocellphonerepair.com/glow, and you can find everything rather that I used in this video. So let's see if we can get a good seal and get this thing started. And it's not going to cooperate with me. Looks like I'm not getting a good vacuum here. You can see it's starting to open down here at the bottom. And we should be able to get inside at this point. There we go. It's just starting to open up, if you can see, right towards the center. And I'll apply some more heat momentarily. Use your pry tool to carefully work your way around the lower part of the phone and about 3/4 of the way up the sides. Remember that there are cables at the top, so we don't want to pry too close to them, and you also won't be able to pry in from the upper end of the phone because of the tabs that lock the display into place. Okay, so it looks like maybe we've got one side intact. I'll probably have to apply a little more heat this side. And it looks like some of it's coming apart. Anyways, so as careful as I've been, it's just about impossible to get this off in one piece. I got to clean off of a few areas, but it just wants to stick to everything. So I'm going to say more than likely you'll just want to replace that entire piece. Got most of it, not 100%. There are a few places where it broke, so we'll go back and replace that later on. Now at the top of the phone, we do want to make sure that we disengage from underneath because there are tabs that tuck under the top of the frame, so you might want to bring it down to about this area, and then you can lift up and make sure you're clearing the main camera in the back. Once you do that, I wanted to show you a shortcut. We need to stabilize this so that it doesn't flop over and put any stress on these cables. So what tends to work out well is a roll of strapping tape. If you just put this around the outside, you can lay it down and then it won't go flopping over and causing problems with those cables. Now the next thing we want to do is remove the battery connection. So there's a panel here that needs to come off. You always want to make sure that you disconnect the battery for a number of reasons. One of the main ones is that we don't want electricity flowing through here while we're modifying the backlight components because they can short things out that are very difficult to repair. So we've got 2 screws here, and then we'll take off this metal panel. If you can grab it with your fingers, that's fine. Otherwise, I would recommend a pair of nylon tweezers or ESD safe tweezers. Let's get right under here, and this will lift straight up. Move that away. And then the one thing that these tools, which often come with this type of kit, the one thing that these are actually good for, and that is disconnecting the battery cable. You're going to have to be very careful here though, because you want to make sure to get under the metal piece that's just underneath this foam, but don't start digging in there too deep because you can damage the components that are underneath. So we want to go just under the metal plate, pry this up, and then it folds over, and you can see it's just a press-on connector. Once we got the battery disconnected, we are relatively safe, so we shouldn't have to worry about anything being shorted out on the inside. So we'll go ahead and take a look at let's zoom out here. We'll take a look at the light mod. So very similar, it looks like, to the iPhone 6 that we did. And this is going to sit inside the housing. And you can see they've got some circuitry down here that's probably going to just lay right on top of this area at the bottom. But what we need to do is make a connection up at the other end. And while the best way to perform this mod would be to solder everything into place, for a do-it-yourself, that is not really practical for most people. So what we're going to do instead is use some adhesive and foam padding that comes with the kit. So I will still set this aside for the moment because it's going to be a second before we get there. What we need to do is remove the battery, so that we can put this inside of the rear housing. Now the trick to removing the battery is that there are two tabs down here, and I'll zoom in again so that you can get a clear shot. So down here on the battery you have two tabs. They kind of come over this way and fold over the top. And we want to get underneath these and just peel them away. So very carefully take something thin and pull this back. It's got a adhesive substance underneath it, so you want to get the black piece and the white gooey stuff that's underneath it, and then just pull these back to about this point. And once you do, you'll be able to grab a hold of this entire strip which runs underneath the battery, and we're going to pull it this direction straight down. So be very careful as you do this. If you break them, then they don't work anymore. So what we want to do is get a hold of this, pull it towards my right. Make sure you're getting all of the adhesive. It's a little tricky to get a hold of this thing. Okay, once you start pulling it out, you can just take your time. I know it's hard to see, but in a moment I'll get this thing started. And as you start to pull it out, you'll notice that it just stretches. So just take your time. And there, it's snapped off. So that's going to be fun. Let's try the other one and see if we can get it out in one piece. I'm going to say that what you'll probably want to do to make this more successful is go ahead and remove the buzzer. So I'm going to do that now. You've got two screws here and here. And if you take these out, you'll have a better angle to reach the adhesive and hopefully not have to go through what I'm going to have to do because that strip broke. Right, so after those two screws come out, you can just lift the buzzer out of the phone like so, and then you'll have a better grip hopefully on this strip down here at the bottom, and you can pull it over towards my right very slowly. Just take your time. If you go too fast, again, it tears. So thanks, Apple. What we're going to have to do now is get underneath the battery somehow to pry it out, which is never fun. So what you can do, two things. I'm going to fold this over just for a second. We're going to heat up the back part of the phone right behind where the battery is located so that it'll make prying the adhesive away easier. Don't get it too hot though, you don't want to cause any damage to the battery. And from here, see, this adhesive is just really messy. From here, if you have a credit card or room key card, something like that, you can usually come in from this side. You want to get as wide of an area as possible as you're prying, because we don't want to put stress on one small part of the phone. Also be careful up here because we have some cables. They should be well protected, but you want to make sure that you don't scrape anything on accident. As long as you stay on the right side of the retaining plates and just kind of work your way across. And after you have a decent amount, you can kind of lift and push, and you can see I've got a hold of the adhesive again. So I'm going to try to pull some of this out. And continue till we get most of the way through where the battery is located. And it looks like I got a hold of the sticky stuff. So at this point, I think we can lift this out most of the way. And there you have it. So hopefully you have an easier time with that than I did. Straighten out the battery. Make sure you didn't puncture it. If you did, you'll smell something disgustingly sweet, and that means you have to replace your battery. And the downside about iPhone 6, generally any iPhone batteries, it's difficult to find a really good one. So while you can buy these online and you have a guarantee that they will work, in many cases they don't work for very long. So you'll have to return it and get another one. So I will, again, supply links in the video description. If you're looking for reliable parts and tools, you should be able to find them there, including the battery for this phone. And we have the battery out. So our next task is to remove the Apple. And in order to do that, we're going to peel off this piece of plastic tape. And if you can't get under it with that, probably a plastic razor blade is going to be the best tool for this job, if I can find one. Now let's try out this spudger. See if it's sharp enough. It's kind of rolling up on me. It's not what I want. But once we get it started, we should be able to grab a hold of the tape. Pull it away, and I'm going to set that here for the moment. And now we're going to use a razor blade to get started underneath the logo. You want to use something very thin to start prying this so that we don't put too much pressure on the back of the housing and leave a big dent. So I'm going to come in here with as flat of an angle as possible just to get it started. And once you get underneath, you can probably grab this with your fingers and just pull. Like so. And then we will save this for later and peel off that tape so that we can stick down our new logo. We're going to put this in place of the old one. And it looks like there's some sort of plastic coating on this, so I'm going to take that off now rather than later. There's kind of a sticker that goes over the outside. And of course we want to route this so that we get down inside. And this is still a bit awkward. I'm going to recommend that you take off the screen because when we go to put the gasket back on the inside, that is going to be in the way. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to remove. Do keep these in order. You'll see that these screws are much different in size. This one especially is much longer, and you don't want to end up putting that screw into the wrong hole or you may not be able to use your phone anymore. So make sure that you lay these out and keep them in order. We'll take this plate off and then carefully unplug the cables. There's one here, one on the outside, and then one here. And there you have it. Screen removed. Set that aside. Now we can get our Apple installed properly. And if you remember, this tape almost went underneath that corner, but I think we'll be okay with that. That does have to almost slide under the logic board slightly. And when you get it lined up, let's stick into my tape here. You get it lined up, turn it over, you can see it's got a nice fit. Now we want to secure that. So I'm going to take the tape that we removed, which is sticking to everything meanwhile. And we'll see if we can't get this to adhere. You know, it's not going to do a whole lot of good. It'll help. But having the battery on top is what's really going to lock this into place. All right, so that's close enough. And of course, these are the cables that you want to be careful about prying underneath the battery because they are right in the way. This is going to go off to the side, which is interesting because you kind of expect this to lay down flat. You need to make sure that it does. So there's going to be a bit of a crimp, it looks like, in this part. Go ahead and put the buzzer back inside. Now, do we want that under or over is the question. I'm going to go with over the buzzer because it seems to fit much more comfortably. If you wanted to, you could reinstall this adhesive on the inside, but it's really not necessary. There are quite a few options. I like to use either the 3M double stick adhesive, or you can use the red tape adhesive, which is another great solution for keeping batteries inside the phone. I'm just going to cut a strip a little shorter than the battery. I want to fill in this area right here. So we'll get as close as we can. And we'll just stick this right here. Right, so we will have some slack in this cable. We'll have to make sure that's sitting down in the area at the bottom where it's supposed to be before we stick the battery in. So make sure you have this lined up at the bottom, and then we can go ahead and put the battery inside like so. And what I'm going to do to make sure this doesn't shift is I'm going to add some kapton. You can also use electrician's tape or something similar, but I want to make sure this thing isn't flopping around and end up getting smashed. I want it to stay sticking in the right location. So this is the best tape for the job. And if you ever need to remove it, it's easy to take out again. So I'm going to stick this just like that so that it doesn't cause me any problems later on. And now we get to install the upper part of this. So in order to do that, we want to remove a small piece of adhesive here. Hopefully you can see that. It's a very small black piece of adhesive that needs to come off, and this covers up the contacts for the backlight, and that is where the interface is located so that we can control the glowing apple. So just peel this back and you'll see there are 4 contacts on the inside. I'm going to set this here so that if I ever need to go back and put this back together, I can move that into the position it was previously. Now the proper way to do this, and if I were not doing a do-it-yourself video, I would solder this into position. Be very easy. You have 3 contact points there. You can probably add a small amount of solder. And then this should allow you access to it, although it looks like it may be coated, so you might have to cut through whatever substance is laying on top of this. But since we're not going to worry about that, all we need to do is make sure that A and B line up. So the trick to this thing here is that when you lay it down on top of the contacts, you should be able to see the shiny part of the contacts coming through these small holes. So I'm going to see if I can show you that under the magnifier. What I would recommend you do first is take one of these pieces of adhesive, and again, electrician's tape will work just fine. Go above where the contacts are, and I'm going in sort of at an angle because we want to be able to clear the part of the phone up here in this area. Now the tricky thing here is that we're going to have to lay this down and be able to see that the contacts are showing through, which is not the easiest thing in the world. Let's see if we can get it on there. So when you see metal underneath, well, of course it's going to shift on me. You'll need to tape down both ends. Now that's not working. Let's get this secured so that it will stay flat, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Once you can see the shiny metallic part of the contact showing through the holes, then you know that you've got this thing lined up straight. And this is a good reason not to tuck that tab underneath the metal plate inside the phone, because in this case I was not able to get it to line up straight until I put it on the outside of the panel. So if that didn't make any sense, what I was referring to is that the tab that goes this direction, you do not want to put it under this metal panel unless you're absolutely certain it's going to be in the correct position, because mine was pushed back slightly and it wouldn't make contact. So I had to move that out of the way. And now I have probably destroyed the cushion that goes on the back of this thing by this point. So what I'm going to do is just cut a few pieces of tape and put them over the top of it. We need to have just a thin layer that's going to push against the back of the connection there. So you can just cut a few pieces and stack them on top of each other, and that should give you enough to, oh, look what I just found. There's a cushion that I still have. So let's see if we can go ahead and stick this back into place. That'll probably do the trick. Just to be safe, I'll put a couple extra layers on top. And as with the iPhone 6, you really have to put this together to find out if it's going to work or not, which, as you can imagine, is kind of a annoying part of this project, because the adhesive that we put on the outside of the phone is going to have to be replaced. It's completely destroyed at this point because I've opened it and closed it so many times. However, it is getting easier to open the phone, and these are very, very helpful to get it started. So let's go ahead and put everything together. I'm not going to put the plates back over the contacts or the battery. I just want to test this and make sure it's working properly. And if so, and this is the tricky part, lining these cables up, I usually have better luck looking at them from an angle, because Apple does not put the sticker on the back of the cable exactly in the center. And ever since the iPhone 4S or so, it seems like these stickers can end up just about anywhere on the back of these connections, which is unfortunate because it makes it annoying to work with sometimes. All right, so we've got those two connected, and make sure you don't force these. Be very careful when you plug them in. They're easy to bend and easy to damage, and if you damage the connector on your logic board, you are going to want a new one, and you will definitely have to hire a professional to replace that for you, and even then, it's not a fun project. So when you put it back together, make sure you tuck the upper end in first. There's a big tab that has to go underneath the edge of the screen. And when it does, I kind of push the screen upward this direction and then very slowly work my way along the edges, and it should close up completely. And when it does, we will hit the power button. If we've got an apple on the front, we should have a green apple on the back. So finally I got that thing to make contact on the inside. I had to put about 6 or 7 layers of electrician's tape, and I'm not sure how well this is going to show up in this particular lighting. So let's turn the lights down and see if you can really get a look at the logo. All right, so maybe you can see this. That's really tough to make out. Let's turn the brightness up. So you can see we have our green glowing logo on the back. It looks great here. It's very difficult to get this on video, but I think at the right angle you can see. And there you have it. You can adjust that manually or you can have it automatic. If you found the video helpful, like it, share it, check out my channel for more tutorials and product reviews, and most of all, remember to hit the subscribe button. Feel free to leave your feedback in the comments section, and thanks for watching.